Adam, if industrial design were pancake batter, you'd be a French pastry chef spooning it into your mouth.
I have been told that before. Welcome to Engineer vs. Designer,
the podcast.
For product designers, engineers, makers, geeks, freaks, and people who like to abuse their ears once a week or so. My name is Adam, industrial designer of CADjunkie.com.
And my name is Josh, mechanical engineer of SolidSmack.com.
Each week's show is broken into three glorious halves. First, we'll dish out the top product design stories from this week's news, courtesy of SolidSmack.com.
Followed by tips, tricks, and Q&A compliments of CADjunkie.com.
And finally, we'll talk with special guest Jeff Baer, industrial designer and 3D printer aficionado of J. Baer Designs out of the great state of Maryland.
Go Terps! Jeff, it's great to have you with us. If you were Pee Wee Herman, what would your word of the day be?
Josh, your word of the day would be Fantissimo.
Whew, I like it. That is Fantissimo. This week's Solid Smack update is brought to you by T-Splines, the surface modeling software that's changing the way we think about 3D organic shape design.
Demolishing the status quo like a bull in a 3D CAD China shop.
Giving you intuitive control over those tricky, smooth surfaces on your CAD models at tsplines.com. What's this? PTC, makers of Creo, formerly Pro E, has launched another free app. Yes, it's true, partly. PTC has released Creo Elements Direct Modeling Express 4.0. Is it free? Yes. Is it new? Not so much. This is a repackage of Co-Create Personal Edition with the clean look of Creo and reduced functionality, but still worth a look for its direct modeling ability.
CAD Faster is back on the CAD collaborative scene with an update to their collaborative software. You've already got add-ins for SolidWorks, MicroStation, and Revit, but who cares? Now they have a free iPad app to view your models. The catch? You're going to need one of those plugins to get the models updated. But very slick, CAD Faster.
Look out. The Blender conference is coming up October 28th to 30th.
In Amsterdam.
Yes, and the call for papers has just gone out. Now, Blender is mostly used in movies and games, but I know some of you who use it in design. So get your papers in, go to Amsterdam, and show those people how to use Blender as a CAD tool.
If you have the stomach for that kind of thing. You have probably heard the news. HP is spinning off their PC division.
Oh, including phones, tablets, computers, and those fancy photo frames.
To focus on software. Wow. Being the largest computer seller with single-digit margins just doesn't cut it, I guess. The touchpad tablet is out. WebOS is out. The future of HP looks dim. But who knows?
In a similarly shocking turn, unless you live under a rock,
which I do,
Steve Jobs is no longer CEO of Apple. What?
Tears!
But apparently their product launch schedule is already set through 2015. So the party will roll on for at least a little longer.
Add those two thoughts to Google's bid to purchase Motorola's cell phone division, and holy guacamole, the winds of change are blowing in the tech city.
But in other better news, EVD shirt, people.
So we're heading to this SolidWorks 2012 blogger launch event next week, and we figured we should have some snazzy new digs to don on the big day.
Snazzy.
Well, friends, you too can have those flashy, fashion-forward threads to clothe your pallid geek skin against the elements. Head over to evd1.tv, click gear at the top, and buy some.
Fantissimo.
Okay, so, fellas, today I want to take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about PTC Creo Elements and Direct Model Express real quickly. First impressions, what do you guys think?
Yeah, what I find interesting, I guess, most about this is how it's just a repackage of their existing products. It's nothing new.
Okay.
And PTC is making this out to be a whole new software package, a whole new ordeal. We have yet to see any sort of review copies for the main programs like Creo Direct and Creo Parametric. The pricing model is still a gray area. Nobody really knows what's going on.
So I have to admit, I'm still completely confused by PTC's new image and their whole new product line. It used to be Pro-E, 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 and then they had, they bought some other stuff and there were plugins and stuff. And now all of a sudden there's this Creo thing. And I'm not sure I understand anymore what's going on, and I can't really keep up. It's kind of confusing me. I mean, it looks kind of flashy. The new site looks very clean and you know, a lot better than the old PTC as far as I'm concerned. But I just don't understand it yet.
That's their site, but their software is not showing signs of anything new, at least from what I can see and the demos that I've seen. I've not actually used the software, but what they're trying to do is consolidate the user interface across all of these different programs.
Okay, so what do you guys think about Blender? I mean, have either of you ever actually used that?
I have a little bit. I like it. I like that it's free and fairly easy to use. So
that seems to be what most people like about it. Jeff, have you actually used Blender?
No, I
before?
never have. It's one of those programs that I'm glad exists because it's open,
sure,
and free. But it's one of those things I've never dug into.
Obviously, huge changes for HP, Apple, Motorola, and Google all at once. Any thoughts on that?
It's insane to me. One is getting rid of hardware, and the other one is bringing it on. With HP, it's beyond me how they can get rid of their computer line. But you know, it's not making the money. So I guess it makes sense.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, I guess I know some people at several of these companies, and as I've talked to them about it, nobody's quite sure what's going on. It's a little bit confusing for sure for everybody involved. But I mean, at HP, there's always been a lot of tension between the printer division, the professional division, and the PC divisions.
It's an interesting mashup where you have a software background for the CEO, but the company has so much of just a hardware background. I mean, I was trying to think what kind of software they already make, and I'm trying to picture them, you know, down the road in like how IBM grew. But
sure. All right. Give us 30 seconds to go twiddle our thumbs a little bit.
It aids thumb strength and dexterity. It's like yoga for Xbox. Here we go. Adam O'Hearn of CADJunkie.com. This morning I awoke to find the words, "Beware the junkie," scrawled in yellow mustard across my bathroom mirror. Was that you?
This week's CAD Junkie Q&A is brought to you by T-Splines, makers of T-Splines for Rhino and TS Elements for SolidWorks. A lot of you may know that CAD Junkie frickin' loves TS Elements for SolidWorks.
He does.
Seriously, it has changed the way I work with CAD forever. Make sure you go grab a demo at tsplines.com. As you know, each week we discuss a listener question, and here is the deal. You may have noticed our snazzy new EVD t-shirts.
Oh, they're snazzy.
From this day forth, any listener whose question is selected will receive a t-shirt.
You get a shirt.
In lieu of a listener question this week, though, I want to shake things up a little bit. I have a question I want to talk about just by my little self with y'all. By now, most folks know that the show is based around the idea that Josh is an engineer.
Stereotypically left-brained.
I am a designer.
Stereotypically right-brained.
And we try to invite guests on who, in various degrees, straddle those two worlds. So I have always struggled with the idea that good design is a soft, gushy, right-brained activity, and been equally frustrated with those who say that engineering is nothing but rigid, analytical, left-brain work.
He struggles with that. He does.
My personal position is that the really great practitioners of both disciplines use both sides of their brain equally. That's just my opinion, of course. Jeff Baer of jbeardesign.com, what do you think about that?
Adam, I think both designers and engineers definitely are straddling those two. You see, at my day job, we have no designers and no strictly engineers. Everybody does both. So beginning of the project to the end of the project, let's say I have two voices in my head. And I'm not saying I really do, but let's just say. So at the beginning, let's say I shut off the engineer voice, you know, keep him away in the dark a little bit. And I'm listening to a designer voice, and he's giving me great ideas and, you know, no limits to my ideas, big picture. And then, but when I get into the, you know, the meat of the project, the majority of the project, it's, you're listening to both sides, and it's very much a collaboration between the two. And then finishing up, you have deadlines and you have criteria you have to meet, and so you have to make some hard decisions. And
I actually wish more designers I worked with were like that.
It's I mean, when there's definitely, if I had an engineer, I probably would end up, you know, relying on them a lot more, and have less of a balance myself,
So you end up having to do a lot of that work yourself, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. When I'm sketching something, like I'll be sketching on trace, and then when engineering time comes on, I'll get out the graph paper lots of times, and it's hard when one starts and one stops. But when I'm sketching something, I'll certainly be thinking about material thicknesses and those kinds of engineering questions, and you listen more later in the project than the beginning.
Well, for me, I think a big part of the mindset comes from the fallacy that product development is somehow a linear process and that there should be a clean handoff from engineering to design or vice versa. And at a lot of companies, I see engineering teams trying to finalize all of their Frankenstein engineering designs just to hand them off to designers to sprinkle their magic dust and make it pretty at the end.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you see a lot more art and design-centric companies with designers making pretty pictures that are clearly impossible to achieve from an engineering standpoint, and then they expect engineers to pour make-it-work sauce all over the thing, and suddenly it'll be a working
In
product.
my experience, though, the most effective product development teams have a designer and an engineer working on a project from the very earliest stages of a project.
And sometimes you'll even see amazing ideas exchanged where like a designer comes up with a great mechanical idea, or an engineer feature leads to a really striking visual feature.
Well, yeah, and that is exactly what engineer versus designer is all about, right?
Yep,
that intersection where engineers and designers are able to make design decisions that work for everybody, from marketeers to engineers to designers, retailers, and end users.
And to bring this whole conversation back around to design tools and techniques, I would say that tools are increasingly trying to accommodate both ways of thinking, working from the very earliest stages of the design process.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously there's been a ton of emphasis lately on the earliest stages of development in the industry, with everybody focusing on these fast and furious, sexy, direct modeling tools, many of which are aimed directly at the ideation phase of the design process. Of course, we're thinking of tools like Key Creator, Space Claim, Creo Direct, and built-in solutions like Synchronous Tech and Solid Edge and NX.
Then on the rapid surfacing side of things, we've got tools like T-splines with TS elements making waves in the Rhino and SolidWorks world. There's Imagine and Shape that's been doing similar things for CATIA for quite a while now, and rumors are always floating around about similar organic surfacing tools for the other big
and I
players.
think my biggest frustration in all of this has been that CAD companies still seem to insist that as an industrial designer, all I really want is loosey-goosey, ooey-gooey gumdrop surfacing with no constraints or dimensions whatsoever. And so this is a heartfelt plea from me to all the CAD companies out there who want the business of designers like me. Industrial designers need dimensional control just as much as engineers do. Yes, we want to make flowing organic shapes as well, but even those are going to need to be dimensionally correct as we're working. So please help us out.
Okay, Aunt Susie's making fritters and badly in need of a potato cannon. Be back in a minute.
She needs that potato cannon.
As you know, today we sat down with Jeff Baer, industrial designer and 3D printing aficionado.
We brought him on because, like other guests on our show, he's using design tools on the border between art and engineering and using technology to do that.
So, Jeff, we have a few questions for you.
Which is why you're duct taped to a chair under a spotlight.
Jeff, what's your personal elevator pitch?
So if somebody cornered you in an elevator, you got 30 seconds to describe what you do. What do you say?
I would say I'm a problem solver. I look at design problems. When you have a need, I'm trying to come at it different ways, and I balance a design with engineering to get something to work, but not necessarily a way that's been done before.
On a consulting basis or on a particular type of product?
On a particular type of product, a user, something where there's a high user interface, where there's a large amount of handling with the object, whether it's in your hands or...
So you attended the industrial design program at the Philadelphia School of Engineering and Design. Did you know you wanted to go the design route?
It's really interesting that both of those words are in the name of the program, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
I heard about it from a Art Institute representative.
Sure.
And as soon as I heard about the program, it just clicked. It's just, there's no question about it. So,
what excited you about it?
Just having this balance. I've always excelled in mathematics and then also loved photography and art as well. So there's just a really good balance there of problem solving. And, my job today is a great balance of that as well. Some days I'm engineering and trying to figure out a sheet metal part and, really an intricate problem. And then other days I'm, sketching.
But Jeff isn't just a 9-to-5 designer.
No, sirree, Bob, he's not.
One of the reasons we brought Jeff on the show was to talk about jbeardesigns.com, where Jeff is designing and custom manufacturing products all by himself using rapid prototyping services.
So we asked him what drives him to keep working even when he gets home from work.
So I guess my day job ends at 5, and then I come home and I'm my dad and my husband, and that's when my JBear Design job starts. So those are the kinds of projects that I don't get to do at work. They're generally all, very, they're all driven by my own desires and my own interests. So it's all usually pretty personal. And then when I see like opportunities.
So this is at jbarrettdesign.com. And if you look there, you use a lot of rapid prototyping to build your various products, and you have quite a few. Tell us about that decision to go ahead and use that.
It kind of started just to, as a hobby to see what kind of things I could make. And I think it was after, once you get one of these things in your hand, especially one of the prints made out of like the polyamide, and you can really tell like, this can actually be a product, not a prototype. And that kind of happened in conjunction with Shapeways, pushing out their shop and, giving people control to monetize designs.
Now that is cool stuff. I know this is in no way a new idea. We've been talking about using RP tools for micro-manufacturing for a long time now, but I love that we're actually watching that dream become a reality at this point. It's so exciting.
But the impact goes far beyond just making products using CAD tools and printing them on the cheap. Online marketplaces like Shapeways are making it easy for people to design a product at home and for other people to order that product online without the designer ever having to touch the physical item.
It's really amazingly efficient, and the technology is still in its infancy, but this really is the dawn of a new era of product development, as cheesy as that sounds. And in the not too distant future, major manufacturers are going to start offering products that are custom made for the person ordering it.
But in the near term, it's changing the way we think about the design process itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, I love iterating. I love iterations, and that's one of the great powers of the rapid prototyping, where I can, like, a product can never has to be like a final design. I can push a design out and sell it, maybe like 15 of version 2 of this thing sells, and then I develop it more, and it's never really at a finished state.
Well, if you look at Jeff's designs, you'll see that he makes really beautiful use of intricate tessellations and patterns all over, which is lovely for its own sake. But the story gets even better when you hear why those patterns exist.
And this really gets back to what we were saying earlier about the confluence of design and engineering working together. There are several components to what he's doing here.
First of all, the kinds of intricate patterns he's achieving are difficult or even impossible to achieve with traditional fabrication techniques. 3D printing allows him the flexibility to create 3D shapes that simply wouldn't have been possible not too long ago.
But the patterns aren't just random jumbles of shapes, and despite being imaginative, they are not totally arbitrary.
And as I'm sure anyone out there can imagine, you can use patterns to achieve all kinds of things in your product designs, from structural integrity to material cost savings.
Once I get a design that I'm pretty comfortable with, I'll be looking at different ways to cut material out to cut costs, and patterns tend to do that more efficiently and more aesthetically, than just, an ugly cut. And, my first iPad wrap I drew had a solid back on it, and, one upload to Shapeways, and you get the price for that, and you're like, no, that's not going to happen. So you start cutting away, and you become very efficient with your materials, and you start deciding how to make those negative spaces more attractive and more appealing.
Alrighty, Mr. Bear. Having you on the show has been better than rubbing blueberry ice cream on your sunburned belly. Thank you so much for being with us this week.
It's been great, Adam and Josh. Thanks a lot for having me.
And to our listeners, you've enjoyed another 6 days without the oppression of our voices in your earballs, and the ending of this episode marks the beginning of yet another. Congratulations.
Congratulations. God only knows why you put yourselves through this. Also, as you know, Engineer vs. Designer is but a wee babe of an idea. We are still finding that voice, and we need your feedback. Chime in on EngineerVsDesigner.com and tell us what you think.
Our complaints department is overwhelmed with hate mail from last week's episode. To file your own complaints, be sure to like us, +1 us, follow us, or whatever.
Ross Hartman of RossHartman.com, thanks so much for the tunes, buddy.
We'll see you next week, and remember, without engineers, designers would sit around and probably draw cartoons all day.
And without designers, engineers would cause everybody else to lose the will to live.
Fantastimo.